Well, this video's been a long time coming, hasn't it? Did you miss me? I missed me too. Yeah, last few months have been one hell of a ride. Lost a few family members, lost a few jobs, got taken advantage of and backstabbed, had to cut someone off for both our sakes when they're in a bit of a desperate situation, and all of this, mind you, while moving. So, suffice it to say, I've been feeling quite exsanguinated lately. However, amidst all of this, the new place has been, well, really nice. I mean, just look at that. Can you see it? Of course you can. The camera quality sucks. Yeah, this place has been very rejuvenating for me. It's pretty great being out of the suburbs finally. And what can I say? It's very nice being able to get back to nature. To have a little solitude. So I'm on the up and up. However, my new environment has not been the only thing to contribute to my healing. You may be asking yourself, what exactly is it that I'm drawing? This, my friends, is the start of my book cover. Yes, I've been working on a novel for the past, 3 to 4 months? I've completed the first draft, and now I'm about 90-something pages into the second draft. So part 1 is done, 4 chapters in, and it's looking like it's going to be about 14 chapters and 270 pages total. And I'm not just writing it, I'm illustrating it too. Yes, you might see where this is going. An illustrated novel for adults. Because I, for one, am of the firm belief that adults deserve nice things too. It's going to be a surreal, philosophical fantasy novel with themes of redemption, man's place in nature, what constitutes virtue, at what point is someone redeemed. But I'll get back to that in just a minute. Because during the sketching process, I decided to take a little bit of a break because I was starting to miss my watercolors and I had access to them finally. Let me tell you, I thought that painting at dusk by candlelight would be very romantic, but it was not. It was dark. Now, it might look hideous now, but keep in mind that this is just a little rough painting that I did. Besides, I had no such fears of failure, for my sins could be easily quashed. Because in gouache, I trust. With this opacity, I have the power to erase any and all heresy. With this boon, I am invincible. So, in other words, I was chillin'. It's nice not having to worry about an ugly end product, or at least not too ugly of an end product. It would have been nice to have my watercolors available to me before the move to help cope with some of the stress, but I did have another outlet, which was writing, and boy did I get involved in that. I invented 4 different religions for the novel, some of which are more fleshed out than others. I had initially intended it for it to be, 120 pages or so. It was looking like it was going to be 7 chapters at first, but then it just spiraled. Like so many different subplots and characters, and I just fell deeply in love with the process, which is not something I felt for a very long time. And here we come to the mighty gouache. White gouache mixed with a little bit of yellow to mix in with the skin tones. And seeing as I was gouaching the spread anyways, figured I'd spruce up the top right painting a little bit, which was initially a little exercise in effects, but then went horribly south in every way possible. So now it looks just a little less hideous. And while the water was still wet on the paper, I reminded myself that randomness is the strength of watercolor. Now my palette looks like I assaulted someone at a pride parade with it. And here's the full spread. Please ignore the top right. Yes, this little 2x4-inch victory, which is what she said, really helped with my mood. I think undertaking small tasks that bring a little beauty into the world, whether that be painting or constructing a birdhouse, are essential for weathering the storms in life. But we're not here to talk about wellness. I have a future novel to pitch. It all started when I was contemplating some of my favorite characters, such as Uncle Iroh or Gandalf the Grey, the mentor-type characters. And I was thinking, well, what if they started off incredibly evil, irredeemably so. And I mean Uday Hussein levels of evil, which if you know who that is, then you probably know what to expect from the first 2 chapters. When it comes to SA or infanticide, I tend to either cut away or gloss over that stuff, but the first 2 chapters are still quite gory, and generally disturbing. I mean, I want you to hate this character, and I pulled just about every trick in the book to make him as unsympathetic as possible. The protagonist essentially worships the will, so when it comes to intrusive thoughts, he sees those as the ultimate exercise of free will, for reasons the book details. I wasn't recording when I detailed some of the characters on the sheet. However, as you can see, the character went through a few different iterations. Ultimately, I settled on more of a hatching style more than just values. So the character's a villain, and through a very intense sequence of events, he finds himself in the spiritual realm, where he is set on a pilgrimage by a group of spirits to act as their avatar, where he is forced to divert his religious fervor elsewhere, let's say. But he isn't saved or redeemed right off the bat. Oh no, I don't even tell the reader at the point which I think he's redeemed, let alone if he is. His sense of empathy is pretty permanently stunted. He's not above questioning the spiritual realm, which is effectively his life purpose to represent, and he's repeatedly forced to confront the ghosts of his past. I'm very curious to hear what people have to think about the character and his journey. It's the kind of narrative where my own opinions could change many years from now, and I don't think that I would disown the story or anything. I think I would just read it differently. So that's what I've been obsessing over for the last 3 to 4 months, when I'm not laying in bed staring at the ceiling, fantasizing about that solar flare arriving, and, giving humanity a good old-fashioned discombobulation. But you're not here for me to pitch my novel or discuss well-being, and yeah, that joke was stale first time around. Let's discuss the illustrations. If you've seen my Moose Man video, or if you're on Instagram and you saw my concerned spider watercolor painting, then you know I'm a big fan of the abstractions of watercolor and being pretty loose in that department. I'm also a big fan of the Golden Age illustrators, like Edmund Dulac or Arthur Rackham, or people who emulate the style like Tony Dieterlese. So I'm going to try and incorporate elements from them, and at the start of each chapter for the main illustration, also incorporate the magical, natural randomness of watercolor into symbolic and somewhat surreal paintings. But for the book cover, I want them to be very simple drawings, kind of like the supporting illustrations throughout the story. I want the ideas to grab a potential reader's attention, rather than whatever crazy art might be inside. The art does serve a bit of a dual purpose, seeing as I intend on using this novel as a sort of portfolio for potential future illustration gigs. I don't want to get my hopes up, but I do suspect that my novel will see some moderate level of success. Some people who have read scenes from my novel compare it to Stephen R. Donaldson or Raymond D. Feist, which, I gotta say, is one hell of a compliment. As dark as the story might begin, I do try to give the light and wholesome stuff as much power as possible. Ultimately, I want this story to be life-affirming. Make no mistake, it gets grim and intense later on. However, I don't want the darkness and venality to be its main appeal. Even in the first few chapters, there's comic relief when it's appropriate, and I do try to show the reader that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So at this point in my life, I have to say I'm quite glad to be out of part 1 and onto more wholesome stuff. Having this project to work on has significantly helped with the recovery process. My iPad ran out of storage for this clip, but for those of you who want to know, for the medium values I just used some tight cross-hatching and went over with scribbles to indicate foliage. Lately I've considered that it doesn't really matter how often you've gone through the grieving process already or had to overcome a stressful situation or a stressful time. I think some effects just need to linger and kind of burn out on their own, run their course, so to speak. I mean, this video has taken me like 2 weeks to get out. Like, I've been pretty sluggish lately, a little bit more irritable. Not that I've been on Klaus Kinski's level or anything, but some things are just gonna exist for a while, and that's okay. In fact, I would even argue that it can help your character in the long term. but only if you're conscientious and maneuver correctly. For example, that irritability that I mentioned, it has helped me be a bit more assertive, and I don't think I've crossed any lines with anyone. If you're going through a time where you feel you've lost your mask, maybe try taking advantage of it. Read the room, make sure your words are coming from a place of productivity, and you may be surprised by the results. Sure, this has been one of the lower points in my life, but by assuming that everything is for my ultimate benefit, and by writing out the waves of those things that I can't reason my way out of, and with the help of these projects, I feel that for the first time in years I'm finally hitting my stride, even if that looks a bit more like limping at first. And here are how the drawings turned out, pretty much as I had imagined them in my head. But this, of course, is no book cover. These are mere puzzle pieces to be assembled digitally. And just in case the inking process went horribly awry, I did already scan in the pencil sketches, so you could say that I did this with a little insurance. Consider this the beta version. Yeah, just making a few minor adjustments to some of the heads, a few extra strokes here and there. And no, I'm not going to try and match the colors manually. I'm just a low-down, dirty color picker, and that's all I'm ever gonna be. Added a proper circle above the ship. And there we are. Have you seen a more glorious, beautiful book cover than that? Well, maybe. Maybe you've seen one exactly like it, I don't know. But I gotta say, I am quite happy with the end product. I think it pretty clearly represents the story and the stages of it and what the reader can expect to some degree. And I think this is a pretty good place to end the video. I hope you got something out of it. And if not, well, that's not my problem. So be sure to smash that dislike button and leave your cruelest comment down below. Farewell.